You talked about introspection. That made me think of a colleague of mine who spent 7 years trying to get into a residency program. Finally, I was like, you need to tell me about one of your last interviews. The conclusion that I came to was that you are cocky. And this is why you're not getting into residency. So introspection, how are you navigating your own personality, I guess, beyond just the, I check this box and I pass the step 3. Listen, check boxes ain't gonna get you everywhere. You got to learn how to relate to people.
Certain people we recommend mock interviews. You please sit down with somebody, and I tell people all the time, because they're like, oh, I want to be myself 100% of the time. I don't want no program that don't want me. I get that, but they're also making one of these decisions, and you need to treat all of these like first dates,
Yeah, bring the best parts of you. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Docs Outside the Box. I am your host today, Dr. Renee. I'm flying solo. I kicked Dr. Nee off the podcast and he is no longer with us. Okay. I'm just kidding. Dr. Nee may or may not be joining us a little bit later, but today we do have a very special episode for you all. And we're really excited to continue on with the kind of partnership that we have going with the Student National Medical Association, or otherwise known as the SNMA, which is an organization that is near and very dear to my heart, that I've been a part of since I was a student and continue as an attending, being a part of. And we are doing this particular episode, or these series of episodes, to really commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Student National Medical Association, which started in 1964 at Howard University School of Medicine, as well as Morehouse School of Medicine, or excuse me, Meharry. Meharry. I worked at Morehouse School of Medicine, but the SNMA started at Meharry School of Medicine, as well as Howard University School of Medicine. And the reason that you can, if you're watching on YouTube, that our guests were smiling is because we have 2 guests with us today that went to the Howard School of Medicine, right? Howard University School of Medicine. And today we have back Dr. Love Anani, who was on our previous episode, I believe is 397. And we are joined by his lovely wife, Dr. Uchenna Anani. Anani, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. Okay, that was the one thing I didn't check before we got on here.
No worries.
Dr. Uchenna Anani as well. Dr. Love Anani, if you guys listened to the last episode, you'll know that Dr. Love is an ER doc, and Dr. Uche is actually a neonatologist. However, she is the assistant program director in a pediatric residency program. So I want to welcome you both here, because today we are going to talk about career paths. I know we all three have been through career paths.
Yes.
And, here on Docs Outside the Box, we often talk about money, we talk about pop culture, but when we do talk about medicine, it often is about the career path of medicine and just how we navigate that. And so that's why we're talking with both of you today. So Dr. Uche, you see a lot of residents come through your residency program, obviously, as an assistant program director. What are some of the challenges that you would say that you see with applicants? So before we get to the actual residents, what are some challenges that you see with applicants coming through, that path and trying to navigate whether or not they're even going to even get matched to a residency program?
Okay. That's a great question, kind of starting from the beginning. So I feel like everyone, it's a daunting path. When you get into medical school, it's like, okay, it's survival mode. Like, let me just get through these like preclinical years. Now you get thrown into the clinical and you're like, what the heck? And now I got to decide on a specialty, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about decisions of like training program versus not. But, you're making a decision going to a training program. You're like, okay, we'll say, for example, I think I'm landing on peds. How do I know that I will do well in the specialty? How do I know if I'll be considered a competitive candidate? All the things, right? And so I think the challenges, those are kind of the initial challenges, right? Like really finding yourself of like, what's going to be well suited for me? And have I gotten enough exposure to make that determination. To be honest, it's just kind of like whatever lands with you and whatever kind of sits with you within you. I think it's helpful to have. I think it's never too late to always have like a mentor. Like, so I think it's easy. It's very important to have a mentor early on, or people that you feel that you can trust to just talk it through, right? So I think it's important to be able to say, like, I'm thinking about this, and these are the reasons why I'm interested in this specialty versus not. But also, how do I align that with, what is my kind of like goal as a person in terms of my future? Like, what's the lifestyle I want to live? Like, what are the things that are important for me outside of my career that I also want to make sure I'm able to align my career with that? And so I think it's important to be able to have those conversations at a time. So I think that's one thing that I think students will struggle with. And I think really being able to assess their, like, am I competitive or not?
Oh, yeah.
That's huge, right? And I definitely have a conversation, or definitely have a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions with students who are really trying to like get a sense of that. And that's where, again, I'm going to emphasize this probably throughout an entire conversation, is mentorship is important. Having people you can rely on to be able to have those conversations and kind of work through the kind of mental process of like, what is this really going to be like for me? And walk through the the technical.
You already know who it is. It's your boy.
Okay, for those
of the application, hilarious.
So the reason we're laughing, folks, if you are not watching on YouTube, is because Dr. Nee just walked in here, trying to bogard,
kicking the door, waving the 4-4. That's what I did. How y'all doing?
You walked in like Brother Man from the 5th floor. That's what you walked in like.
Remember me? Brother Man, upstairs, 5th floor.
That is true.
I can't hear him.
That's true. He can't hear you because I got my earpiece.
Get some of that earwax.
He said you walked in like Brother Man from the 5th floor.
Sharon too.
See, that's the best part about doing a podcast, is because it's not like regular, CNN or whatever it may be. Like, we can have this type of crazy interruption and it still flow. Keep it flowing. Keep it flowing. How y'all doing?
We're good.
So yeah, we were just talking before you came and hijacked the podcast, because I had literally already taken it over. We were just talking about some of the challenges about, applying or even getting to the point of application for residents or for medical graduates. And one of the things that Dr. Uche talked about was the competitiveness, right? Like, how do you even know you're competitive? Do you even have a mentor? What are the kind of what's the pre-work that you have to do before you get to the point of even thinking about what specialty you're going to apply to, if you're competitive to that specialty, and then forget about like where exactly you're going to be, applying to, right? Because that's a whole different, different thing.
Isn't it competitive reading the U.S. News and Reports, that book that tells you everything about the med school? That's being competitive, right? That's what we're talking about.
Right, exactly.
Believe.
Yeah, no.
And I think that's one of the problems is working with students as a mentor. What we tend to see a lot. Oh, I got to do one thing real quick. Before anyone emails us or texts us, we are very well aware. We know Howard goes by Howard University College of Medicine.
Yes, Howard.
Oh, excuse me, College of Medicine.
Because some School of Medicine people, our door's about to be kicked down. Yeah, I'm about to put the boards up. Exactly. But
College of Medicine.
Trying to figure out what's competitive, unfortunately, a lot of students try to get in the minds of program directors and assistant program directors, and they try to assume what these program directors want, and everyone starts with the same thing: scores. And we used to have an easier one. Step one, you take that after your sophomore year, you know exactly where you landed. That's pass fail now.
Right.
So now everyone has shifted their desire to be competitive, or thought to be competitive, from step one to step two. We're seeing students take that earlier, and there's a lot more focus on that. All the while, more students are failing step one now than were before.
Really
ironic.
Yeah.
That's the stats.
Yeah. Or the percentage has gone up. The percentages have gone up. So it's kind of like, but there's no score now. So the theory is, are students not putting that same fervor they were into step one, grinding every day? And now it's just like, oh, it's pass fail. I get to it when I get to it. And I'll grind for step two. Right. But at the same time, if you don't pass that first time, that's still a bad knock on you, right? I don't care if you got a 250 on step two. You didn't pass step one on the first go. They still see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's funny because that was one of the things that we talked about a couple of years ago when step one actually went to pass fail. My thought was, well, you just move to step two and just use that, right? Because numbers are very easy to cut off. The problem with that, I think, and Love, you can speak to this, is that oftentimes students are grinding for the score, right? Students are grinding for the score, but are they thinking about all the other things, right? That pre-work that I talked about. What is that pre-work besides just the score that is going to make you competitive for a residency program? Are students doing that? And what is that pre-work?
And a lot of students do that on the back end, right? So the easy stuff is extracurricular, right? That's what you on the application now. You get a whole section. You get to pick your extracurriculars now. And now the ERAS application highlights the extracurricular activities you find the most interesting. So now when people get applications, it's not just scrolling through the list. They can say, all right, what 10 things now did you do throughout med school? And which of these top 3 are the most important to you and why?
Yes.
And if that section is one sentence, you played yourself. We know you didn't really do nothing, right?
So you can't put starting a podcast.
Or because you can put the time window.
Yes.
And if you put something and it was a month, I was like, I'm sorry. That doesn't register well.
Yeah.
Like if you only if you only did something for a month and that's your most meaningful experience, like that's not going to look right on the application.
But if you can show a story, right? Like,
Yes.
oh, I was a SNMA member my first year.
Yes.
I was chapter parliamentary in my second year, national parliamentary in my third year, speaker of the House the fourth year. They can see that like stretch out, and then you can write all of those things that are great. You write level commitment.
Mind you, I want everybody to know that was actually Dr. Love's SNMA resume.
It was.
But I was able to string that along. You can see that story of leadership, and it wasn't just like Uche said, like, oh, I did this for a month. Like, oh yeah, I went to the SNMA community service drive every Halloween. Okay, like what can you say about it? And I'll tell you, if you use all the characters, we know you would have meant it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Love, how you know my CV?
I do think it's also important to know that everyone comes from a different, kind of place in life and a different background, right? So some people may thrive in terms of doing extracurricular activities that align with their passion, their goals. Others might be like, listen, I'm focused on just trying to get through class because I have all these other needs I have to do that are a priority, right? Whether it be family or support, whatever. And I think that's also important too. And that can still come across very positively in your application. But that's where I feel like you need that advisor or that mentor early on to be like, okay, this is what I'm interested in doing. How do I make sure I'm aligning my pre-work or what I've done thus far to really showcase this is why I would be a strong candidate in whatever specialty that may be. So you don't have to be someone, because I was not SNMA anything, whatever.
She wasn't. But let me hype her up for a second, right? You put the word pediatrics in everything, and Uche was there.
I mean, yes.
The Pediatric Association president, Uche. Throwing a pediatric residency fair, Uche. Going to national conferences, Uche.
So
who's the first one to go to nationals or not nationals, children's national? Exactly.
Yeah.
So whatever your passions will show through.
Anything will go to pediatrics.
Yeah. So if that's your passion, then it'll show through and spend the time on that.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But don't let your passion be getting a 245.
Yes. Yes.
So basically what everybody who's listening, if you're really passionate about something, just double down on that,
Yep.
And don't make it up as you go and say, well, I'm going to pick up crayon or basket weaving and show that off. No. If you're really passionate about pediatrics and you're not passionate about something else, focus on pediatrics or what have you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I find a lot of students. You're waiting for that day? You want to see somebody get basket weaving?
Yes. Everyone always makes jokes about basket weaving. I swear one day it'll show up.
Someone's listening right now, underwater, what?
Somebody has.
Sure. I know, exactly. I was like, I'm pretty sure they're out there.
Nee, I can't with you anymore. I just can't. Somebody gonna come up from underwater, Nee.
They're like, yo, I'm basket weaving.
Anywho,
that's the joke. Exactly. Underwater basket weaving is always the joke. Someone is awesome at it, and I'm waiting to see that person. Waiting to see him.
Yeah, but no, that's really good to know that it's so important. And I'm sure Dr. Uche, you see that as part of the application process, right? So now now as we kind of go through the process, you're looking at applications saying, okay, well, what is actually here? What's of substance here? And sometimes students can really portray their stories very, very well. Other times, it's kind of like, well, this chronological timeline of just all of the academic things that they did, essentially repeating their CV almost verbatim, but just in a story, which really doesn't necessarily bode well. But
it's tough though. Like, if you don't have any experience kind of showcasing yourself, right? If you're just, I work hard, I study hard. Now, in essence, I got to brag about myself, or at least like write an essay or something in a fashion that, like, I have to almost like be a mind reader. That's a really tough thing, particularly like someone where we came from, right? Like, where you like we don't get taught those type of things. So it can be a really tough thing to not just like have verbal spaghetti and like regurgitate your CV.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, I mean, but Dr. Uche, you mentioned also, this is where mentoring comes in.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This is where mentoring comes in.
This is where mentoring comes in for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. And I will say honestly, I think, to give a plug to SNMA, and Tour for Diversity.
Right.
I was just going to say that like those are avenues for students, particularly those who are underrepresented, considered like historically marginalized, whatever, that you can access the programs through those organizations to really get access to mentors, to advisors, and ask those questions early on too, and just get the guide of or even to just understand the process as a whole, right? Because you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know, right? Yeah. And so I think it's important to like be able to just have that plug in early, because then you can like get the exposure and be like, oh, okay, I didn't know I need to like phrase my application in this way, or, this is how I should like think about my personal statement, or, oh, I didn't realize that's something that was a strength of mine. Oh, I can actually put that on my application. Let me do that.
That's huge.
On this, yes, right. And that's where I feel like it's important to like just have people and trust that you can just rely on. I mean, like, hey, do you mind not just being a mentor, but just I want to seek advice. Yeah. And I talk to you from time to time and just check in.
And let me piggyback off of that, right? Like, we always joke that match day is the draft for med school and residency, right? What do you do when you know you're going to enter the draft? You go and get an agent, right?
That's a good one.
You don't just show up on the combine, everything by yourself.
Dr. Love,
listening to our show. I like that. Come some good stories.
Love, no, Dr. Love, Dr. Love, you are encroaching very, very closely to something that I have kind of on my back burner, right?
Okay, exactly. So go and get your agent, people. Go and get your mentor.
I got kicked off as a co-host. Now, Dr. Love, my co-host. Yeah, I need a new co-host.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, right? And I also think it needs to be reversed. Like mentors, like if you're listening and you're mentoring a student, like have the patience.
Yes.
Do constructive criticism. Like if you see an essay that, you're 10 years out or 5 years out, and that essay doesn't, keep up to par, so to speak. Don't clown them, support them. Because I'll be really honest with you. I didn't tell anybody this, but my medical school essay and my residency essay was basically a version of my high school essay that I used to get into college. And I had a mentor who helped me get into a summer program while I was in high school, who said, no, you need to rewrite your essay so that you can get into this program. And then what I did is I used that format to change into a college admission essay. And then I was doing the same thing, not talking to anybody. And so in 4 years, I just never updated it. And then another 4 years, so for me, I was just working with this outdated essay, but it worked once, will not work again. And I felt a little embarrassed to kind of talk to people and say, hey, can you help me with my writing? Like, I don't know if I'm writing something okay. That's what I'm talking about, just to have someone say, okay, let me take a look. Maybe we should change this. Maybe you need to talk more about this extracurricular activity, or maybe tell us more about your story. Yeah. Those are the type of things, the reps that I think a mentor could really help out at, because there's a lot of people floating around, with those type of stories.
No, it becomes very, very challenging to know what, like you said, what you don't know, especially if it worked before and you think it's going to work again. So, now let's talk also about now that you've applied, you've gone to the draft day. You up. It's time for the draft. You open that email. For us, it was open the envelope. I don't know if they still send out envelopes. Some schools
Howard
do,
does.
I guess.
Howard does.
Okay,
does.
Howard College of Medicine does. So you open up your envelope, open up your email, and you ain't get in.
But you didn't know before that point, though.
No. I'm talking about the actual day, like that. What is it? The Wednesday or the Monday? What is it?
Monday.
The Monday, right? The Monday is when you find out whether or not you actually got in. Then by the Friday, you find out where you're going.
Where you match.
Remember?
That's when you're wearing a suit that still has the tag on it because you're like, I got to take it back.
Right.
Am I lying?
Now, so you didn't get in, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. 2 years ago, the match that happened 2 years ago, I had no less than about 5 or 6 unmatched students who called me. And of those 5 or 6, only one of them was IM. The others were OBGYN. Now, I want to tell you that there was a very weird trend going on at that time that I figured out, because everyone was saying, well, I don't know, maybe I should do an extra year at my school and do a research program and then reapply. And I was like, why is every single one of you telling me
The extra year of med school?
Yes, every single one. There was a post on Instagram, TikTok, something where somebody did that and they had all watched that post. These are people who didn't know each other. They had all watched that post, and somebody posted that they stayed an extra year and then reapplied, and then they got in. So everybody was like, that's the ticket.
How do you do that? Like,
and I'm going to tell you why.
And,
I'm going to shoot it to you.
Yeah, let's say.
I'm going to help.
No,
Yeah,
for sure.
Tell me about that. What was that?
The theory on, and hopefully she can shine light on the theory because she's behind the closed door. But the theory on this side of the door in Reddit and on all the mentor applications or mentor spaces is that when you apply to residency, you look better when you are not a graduate of medical school versus a graduate reapplying. Because you already have that MD-DO degree. There are some schools, theoretically, I don't know, I can't say, they have filters on people who have their degree already. So when you're a student, they look at you as a student still. So even though you could have graduated, you say, no, I'm gonna take this research year. Your school does not confer on you that MD degree or DO degree. You go back and you reapply in the match again as a student. Therefore, you're not reapplying as a graduate. And it's thought that you look better when you're applying as a student. Now I'll kick it to someone on that.
Yeah, Dr. Uche, what say you? I need to know.
I think there's some stats behind it, and I think there's also some kind of general background. So I think the caveat is that there is data through NRMP that shows that there's a higher match rate into certain specialties if you are a graduating 4th year or graduating student, as opposed to you were already graduated and now you've completed your degree. So the stats show that. Part of that is it's large population data, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best fit for you as an individual. So I think that's, again, I'm going to say it again, mentorship. That's where you connect with those people to talk about, okay, this is what's happened. Let me talk about from a personalized standpoint, what's going to be best for me in terms of reapplying next year, if that's what I want to do, et cetera. And do I, stay on another year, knowing the pros and cons of extending your medical career and more loans and, et cetera. I think the other thing to take into account is and I'll just speak from my personal lens, I think it's important to know that when you're transitioning into a residency program that you haven't had a long time away from clinical medicine, right? So I think your letters, whether you are, you didn't match this year, you're reapplying this year, you still want to have letters that speak to your clinical acumen, how skillful you are in that regard and knowing that you can transition well. So it is important to keep that in mind too, if you are planning to reapply. I think whether you decide to do a research year, whether you decide to do whatever that gap may consist of, knowing that you still have some connection to clinical activity, observation, participation, so that you can have letters, whether it be from your prior letter writers, or more than likely you need at least one from during that gap year as well, that hopefully can reflect on you as an individual growth potential, et cetera. So that's kind of that's my understanding. I
Yeah.
think
Mhm.
there's actually data that kind of shows like, oh, it's probably a higher likelihood for me to match if I'm still a graduating student as
Yep.
opposed to graduated.
Right. Right.
That's a big price
Yeah.
tag, though. 'Cause
That's what I was going to
price
say.
tag, because that's a lot of just to do a
So,
research here
hey,
too.
do you want to talk about the money? Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about the money? Because
Yes.
these students pop up, and the
Yes.
reason why tends to be a big deal, right? So I'm going to tell you one of the students I worked with last year, and then I'll tell about 1 year before. So the one last year had not passed step 2.
Mm-hmm.
So my recommendation was you need to grind for 2 months doing nothing. So if you stay a student, you can get those student loans up front. You know, your rent is covered, your food is covered.
Right.
You can graduate later on. And that was my advice to him. Even though that price tag adds on a year, you don't have to worry about it. You can do nothing. You're fine. Another student I worked with in the past just didn't match. So it was like, all right, do you know anything else you can do? Yeah, a buddy of mine says he can get me a research position. All right, well, graduate, stop taking those loans,
Right.
go earn money as a physician, technically, do that research, and then reapply. So it just
Right.
depends, like Uche said, what do you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I felt like that year there was like a one size fits all kind of approach with every single one of these students who obviously were not all in the same boat. They weren't even applying all to the same type of residency programs, right?
Social media could be dangerous, right? 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
in one way,
Yes.
you want social media to
Inform
people, as many people as possible, about all the opportunities. But then if they get stuck on that one little piece of advice, we talking about Student Doctor Network all over again,
Ugh.
right?
Oh,
That is the
Oh,
forum that
man.
shall remain nameless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Forgot about
yeah, I
that.
mean, the financial implications of just that decision in and of itself is just, it's just crazy. Especially if you fall into a category where you didn't actually have to do that, like your second student, right? You don't absolutely have to do something like that. The other part of it, when we're talking about the money, is even applying to residency, because that's hella expensive.
Yep.
Hella expensive, right? And we did a presentation for NRMP a couple of years ago, and one of the parts of our presentation, oh, you'll appreciate this, Dr. Uche, it was in pediatrics. There were some stats that showed that people who applied to pediatric programs, if they applied to 13 or more programs, or excuse me, if they applied to more than 13 programs, that their chances of getting into a residency program did not improve significantly at all. And which is really interesting, because I will tell you, the number of people, including myself and this man standing right next to me, who applied to like 40 plus programs. I mean, that's a lot of money to, throw into your education. And my question is, especially on your side, Dr. Uche, is you're getting so many applications.
Sure.
What would you say is the percentage of applicants that you're even offering interviews to, right? Because I don't necessarily think people are thinking about that. Like, yeah, I'm gonna put out 40 applications, 50, 70 applications, but how many people, or what's the percentage of people that these residency programs are even offering interviews to? Because you ain't got room for everybody.
No, you don't. And even now that we've transitioned to virtual, I think, which makes it maybe scheduling a little bit easier, you're not doing that, maybe doing a little bit more. So I want to say the ratio, and this is just me guesstimating, but I want to say it's like for every residency slot that you have, you want to interview X amount of number to ensure the probability is high that you fill all your slots, right? And so say if you have 20 programs or 20 slots, you want to interview at least 8 applicants per slot, right? So like 8 to 10 is kind of the number I'm thinking in my head, just based off some of the numbers I've seen. So if you're in a program, so take for example, internal medicine, right? Internal medicine programs see a lot of applicants that come through. And so they're in the order of thousands. But if you only have 30 slots, right? At max, you're probably going to be interviewing 300, 350.
Right.
And so like you have 3,000 people who applied, you're only getting like a fraction of those who are going to interview. So yeah, I mean, it can be challenging. Now, there are a lot of changes with ERAS, with program signaling, which basically says that like I'm kind of designating you as a program that I'm interested in, would like to go to.
Is that the token?
Every specialty rather. It's not the token. The ERAS token is to be able to apply into ERAS, which I don't really understand.
Oh, okay.
It's just it should be like just register. It's like a token, like a registration token. But like
gotcha.
Signaling is like when I apply to, say I'm applying to 20 programs, but in pediatrics you're allowed to signal up to 5 programs that are your top priority programs. So you signal them, and that gives them an indication that like, oh no, I really am, out of all the programs I'm applying, I'm considering you one of my top 5. And I want you to know that. And then programs can utilize that information, if they wish, to kind of help prioritize how they want to interview.
Yeah. The theory was signaling was supposed to take old, hey, you're my number one email. You're my number one email I used to send out.
Yeah.
The signaling was supposed to take that out.
It still happens.
Yeah. Right.
It still happens.
How seriously is signaling, do you think? How seriously are programs taking signaling?
I think programs are taking it serious because I think, again, because of the changes with like step 1 and like, and I'll be very honest, like I'm a huge proponent of holistic application review, like looking at more of the holistic picture of an applicant as opposed to like just certain numbers and metrics. It's another data point to signal whether or not someone may be interested in coming, right? Yeah. It's not the only thing, right, that was going to designate whether or not you come for an interview or not, but it's just an additional data point. It shows the interest and engagement. And depending on the program, the specialty, the location, things like that, that can carry a lot of weight.
We have a friend who's a program director. I won't put them on blast because I don't need their numbers to go up. But she said she interviews everyone who signals the program unless your application is just trash. But if you have a standard, regular application and you signal, you'll get an interview invite.
Okay. So that's good to know. So at least you're putting that particular resource to good use. Because before it was just a free for all. And like you said, everybody was like, you're my number one. It was like a horrible, horrible bachelor dating scene. You know what I'm saying?
Does signaling cost more money?
Nope.
No.
So okay.
Yeah.
So
and it varies for specialty too. Some specialties like, I'm forgetting.
Like OB had gold and silver signaling.
And it's like order of like 10, 20. I can't remember exactly, but as opposed to, like I'd mentioned, like pediatrics and other specialties. So it just depends.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Because I think, having that resource, one, might actually help to decrease the number of programs that people are applying to, which might actually help them to save a little bit of money. I would hope. I don't know what the stats are on that. I guess NRMP will kind of figure that out, do like the 5-year and then the 10-year and the 15-year.
I'll be curious to know. I'll be curious to know what the trend is. I will say with the transition to virtual, I've seen the numbers go up in terms of applications.
But if you're at like a highly competitive place, though, I'm sure everybody who's applying is signaling,
exactly.
Right? Like if you're at Harvard,
right,
or if you're at another like well-to-do establishment, whatever the specialty is, people want to say you're my like. How do you even distinguish from that? So
right,
I don't know. See, but Harvard has always had those problems, right? It's the smaller places, like where our friend is a program director, like doesn't get as many. So when you do signal, like you only let's use P's, you only have 7. If you use one of your 7, I'm gonna go back to what I used in the last episode. It's 6 or 7. I'm gonna use the state I used in my last episode, even though I like that state. If you're in Idaho and you get one of those 6 like signals, you're like, oh, you must really rock with us to come out to Idaho and be your top 6. So yeah, it matters there. Yes, Harvard probably wonders why you didn't signal them. Like, you didn't signal us?
Am I not good enough?
That's how Harvard uses signaling. You did not signal us.
Don't signal. Gotta make them like you more. There it is. Okay.
It's toxic.
So,
toxic academics.
I will say the best change of all ERAS from when we were in it to now is not even on the student side. I think it's on the program side. Certain specialties like OB have instituted dates where they will tell applicants, we are sending out interviews on this date, and and we're sending out interviews on this date. If you don't get an interview from us on one of these 2 dates, you probably
You
not
ain't coming.
Exactly. So I think that has allowed some students to realize, oh, I have 2 OB interviews by the end of the season. I might need to check that family route right quick. And people have been able to pivot a little bit more than we have in the past, just hoping on a wish and a prayer.
And that's the one thing that I always say to Renee, because I know a couple of people who, and you probably know some people who have graduated from medical school, don't have a place to match. They may do a traditional internship or a rotating internship, depending on MD-DO route, and then they still can't match. And then maybe they go several years not matching, and they're just struggling in silence. Nobody knows.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I just think that is one of the saddest thing, to have this type of professional degree and not either be able to train or not be able to use your degree, but you have hella debt.
Yep.
Right.
Yes.
And I never understood that. Right. Like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be multiple layers to make sure that whoever graduates with either an MD or a DO, that they can do something productive in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Whether they match or not. And I struggle with that, because we know somebody who's gone now, 7 years now?
At least.
7 years.
It's probably more.
Going from traditional internship to
I think he's
house
approaching
officer,
upon 8 years.
house officer, house officer,
Yeah.
house officer. Now the person is trying to get into a really hard subspecialty or residency, and we're just like, yo, you need to consider something that's a little bit more realistic. And they're like, no. But also at the same time, we've seen the opposite too, where people are like, yeah, I'm going to consider something that's a little bit more realistic from a specialty standpoint, a residency standpoint, and they still can't get in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of FMGs can, they understand what we're talking about. It's like, wait, how is it that they can't get a job? Like, you have to get these folks a job somehow, some way.
Yeah. So kind of you guys segued into the career path change. Right. That people, so there's the career path that people say, okay, I'm just going to change, right? Like, I got into this residency program. I don't be here no more. This sucks. I don't want to do this specialty anymore. And then there's the involuntary, change, meaning you either didn't match or you matched, but you got kicked out. And those things can be, one, very differently navigated, because they hit you differently. But two, like Nee was talking about, if there is an issue with trying to figure out how to get back into or how to even enter training, then you're stuck in this conundrum, because oftentimes people don't tell other people that they are stuck there. And that goes back to the mentoring that you were talking about again, Dr. Uche, with, talking to your mentors, identifying a mentor, but also being very realistic about what the mentor is telling you. So if you want to get into a very competitive program, but you've been out 8 years, let's kind of talk about, what's going on. Have you seen, Dr. Uche, because you are the assistant program director, what is the approach to those residents or those medical grads who may either have matched or left their programs or
the non-traditional one
or got kicked out, right? And the reason I'm not using non-traditional is only because the non-traditional is so different in each one of those cases, So, I mean, what's your approach, or are you even seeing a lot of that?
So I can't speak from my own professional exposure. I can speak from more kind of personal exposure, with friends, colleagues and stuff who've gone through this process. And you're right. It's different for everyone. And it's again, you have to take this kind of personalized approach, really assess and say, okay, do I want to do this? Do I want to go back? Right. If I do want to go back, what does that process look like? Do I find an open spot elsewhere? Do I reapply depending on what year you're in the training? Do I consider another career path altogether? And I think it's also complicated by the fact of where you are in life. What are the other things that are going on that you need to be mindful of and take into that equation when making that decision? What opportunities are available, right? It might be, if we're talking about, we'll say I use internal medicine because there's so many number of programs
Mm-hmm.
and lots
Right.
available. Yeah,
Right.
it may be available to do that, right? To transition to another place elsewhere. And for a more like competitive, limited number of slot specialty, that may not be the case. So then, I don't know. I think it takes a lot of soul searching. I think it takes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
introspection. I think it is a very challenging decision. And for those who I know have gone through that pathway, I know those who've been able to get back in. I know those who have not and have decided upon a different path.
Right.
And are completely happy and living their best life. So it just depends on what you feel passionate about and what you're willing to kind of like commit to and do.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like you usually have like your three big reasons, right?
Yeah.
Big reason number one, you did not pass some marker that the program
Sure.
puts in front of you, right? I'll use step 3 as a general example. So you got removed from your program.
Mhm.
Usually it's easier to reapply there. The program directors, the program still likes you. It's just like, look, they couldn't pass it. If they can pass it now, somebody else should take them. That's real easy.
Right.
Number two, you didn't pass rotations within your program. That's a little harder.
That's a little different.
Right? Because that means
Yeah.
you didn't pass and someone failed you on purpose within that program.
Mhm.
So now you get to ask for letters from that program to go somewhere else and you failed. So when it's like that, sometimes it's usually like you really may want to switch specialties. And then number 3 is like you get moved out because you harmed the patient, right? Like if it's a serious harm in the program lets you go, that again can be a little difficult to navigate because if they have to report that, that's going to follow you no matter what you do as a physician. So
Right.
those are the 3 big categories I've kind of encountered in,
I'll also add too that I think it's not always, because I always lump those into like that process of like, what's the word? Not remediation, but maybe you guys are understanding what I'm saying. Like where you encountered some type of like process in the kind of matriculation process through training, right? Like some interruption where you didn't meet the marker or didn't meet the score or whatever that may be. But there are situations where life outside of, residency changes. And you're like, well, I can't continue because now this life thing has changed and I need to either pivot, like step away, maybe come back. And for me, I interact with a lot of people who, are starting families. So like sometimes obviously residency should accommodate for parental leave and et cetera for having children. But I know of people because around like family planning or whatever that may be around family, close family, that they had to stop, they had to step away.
Right.
And so the question is, obviously like, jobs, institutions, programs should be able to allow for you to take that FMLA, that stop and then come back. But if it's something that's going to be more permanent,
prolonged,
prolonged, or like I need to like move,
Yeah.
like I can't stay here.
Yeah.
Right.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
And so making that decision, is also very equally hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the financial implications of all of that, right? Because very likely chance that you're going to have student loans, and whatever job you're going to get, it is very likely that is not going to be, paid high enough for you to be able to just zip through your loans. And so, you feel the financial burden of that as well. And you talked about introspection, and that made me think of a colleague of mine years ago who spent 7 years trying to get into a residency program. He had never actually matched. He was interested in a program in a specialty that was, I would say, semi-competitive. I mean, it was, one of the top competitive ones. But then kind of went his way, like navigated through different specialties in terms of applying every single year for about 7 years. And about year six, he contacted me because he had graduated only the year after I did. I didn't realize that he was not in residency. And so when I found out he wasn't in residency, I was like, oh my gosh, like who's helping you through this? He was like, I was doing this on my own, contacted my mentor and was like, listen, I need you to help me navigate this because I don't even know, I don't even know anything about this. Now, one of the things that we talked about was when you go to an interview, because he was getting interviews. He was getting interviews. Yeah. You see how your face just went?
Yeah, it did. Because it's like, okay, so then that's interesting.
Right. That's
Okay,
a ding,
okay.
ding, ding.
Yeah.
So he's getting interviews. Finally, I was like, you need to tell me about one of your last interviews.
Yeah.
And look, I won't put the whole story out there, but long story short, the conclusion that I came to and that my mentor came to listening to this same story was that you are cocky. You're cocky. And this is why you're not getting into residency. Now, his response to me was, you're reaching. You're reaching. And I'm like, I'm not reaching. I went and I had to tell him, I went through residency. You didn't. And I know that if you approached my residency program, the residents in my program, in the way that you approached those residents, we would annihilate you and just be like, done. Go to the program director and be like, we don't want to work with this person. So introspection, what are you doing? Especially if you're getting interviews, how are you navigating your own personality, I guess, is kind of the way to think about it, right? Like, how are you navigating through this process beyond just the, I check this box and I passed the step 3. I check this box and I still have clinical experience. It's like, listen, check boxes ain't going to get you everywhere. You have to, you got to learn how to relate to people. And sometimes I think we're a little bit reserved, even as mentors, and telling people like, dude, your personality kind of sucks, you know? And if that's the problem, then I don't think that that's the problem for most people, but I think if that is the problem, especially if you have a very extended gap, I think that's something that needs to be explored and it needs to be approached very directly, you know? So I just thought that was interesting because you talked about introspection, but I wanted people to know it goes beyond just, well, what steps did I take?
Yes.
And that's why certain people we recommend, and I know you know a lot about this, Dr. Renee, mock interviews. You please sit down with somebody, talk. Let's see what your setup looks like. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how you come off. And I tell people all the time, because they're like, oh, I want to be myself 100% of the time. I don't want no program that don't want me. I get that. I understand that. But they're also making one of these decisions, and you need to treat all of these like first dates. You don't show up to first dates in sweats, even though you're more comfortable like that, right? Like you dress up. This is very, very similar.
Right. Yeah. Bring the best parts of you.
Yes.
It's okay, that we all got parts of us that aren't the best.
Yes.
But, that's not the thing that you actually want to showcase first. You know what I mean? So I think that that's really important for people to understand. Now, for those of you who are not watching, Dr. D stepped away again.
You already know who it is. It's your boy.
So I have hijacked the show again. But no, I really enjoyed this discussion, because like I said in the beginning, we talk a lot about careers in this podcast. And I think it's important for people who are listening, who are either, medical students getting ready to graduate or residents, to understand that the end of the road doesn't stop because you don't match. The end of the road doesn't stop because you might have to have a career change, because you had to change to another specialty or go to another program. Like, these are not ends of the world or ends of the road for you. But I think the most important thing that you can leave with here today is to understand that you need to get some mentoring.
Yeah.
You really need to get some mentoring. And again, you need to do that introspection to figure out, how are you potentially anyway contributing? How is, maybe the stars didn't align, but if your gap is getting way bigger, then you have to start thinking about what potentially could you be contributing to make your situation not as desirable as you want it to be. So please understand that. The other thing is your resources. We talked a lot here about the Student National Medical Association. And one of the things I will tell you all, that if I have a student who doesn't match or who's afraid that they might not match, that's another thing. Preempt Preempt yourselves, people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We ain't got to be reactive. What about preventive medicine? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. You know how many interviews you had before match day? That should tell you something right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Preempt yourself. Give yourself some, preventive academics. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I tell every student, I'm like, listen, if you think this is going to be a problem, you need to go to every single booth at the SNMA conference, which, by the way, this year is going to be in New Orleans. Do you know the dates, love? You know the dates?
Yes. I always say Easter weekend. That way I don't mess it up.
Easter weekend. There you go. There you go.
Easter weekend. Wednesday,
Easter
Thursday,
weekend.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Easter, ending on March 30th or 31st.
Yeah. It's the last weekend in March this year. So, if you're out there and you're like, I don't know, I didn't pass step 1 or I didn't pass step 2 or whatever, if you think you have an academic issue, even if you are not yet graduating, preemptively start talking with people and figuring out, what kinds of programs will look at you. And don't go up there and just get like information on their program. They don't know you. You got to get them to know you, right? It's like, people always who you know. It's like, no, it's who knows you. Nobody knows you.
And I will say, to hype it up, again, March 28th through 31st, if you think it's not that good, it's not that bad, it sold out. The booths are sold out for the residency, for the med schools and for the residency programs.
Yes.
So if you're a pre-med and you're like, I don't know if this is worth it, again, we are sold out. There are programs on a wait list coming to talk to students at our conference. For those in med school thinking they want to get into residency, we are sold out, right? Schools are having to coalesce into one just to have enough space, right? Certain people have a lot of space. Shout out to Northwestern. Diamond, out there. Shout out to Northwestern.
Big booth.
Big. Wow. Whatever specialty you want, Northwestern gonna have a person there. Right. But that is what I'm saying. So like Dr. Renee said, if you even think, man, I may need someone on the inside to help my application get across the finish line, this is where you meet that person. You get them your business card, your LinkedIn website, get across that finish line.
Exactly. Same thing for the pre-med students. Dr. Love just mentioned, the pre-med exhibitor fair is sold out, which means all of the spaces for all the possible medical schools that can be there, they're all taken up. So that means that you need to get on down to New Orleans and figure out how you're going to get through every single one of those schools and prepare your spiel. Talk to your mentors before you go so that you know exactly what you're going to do, exactly what you're going to say. We're going to be out there also, Docs Outside the Box. We're going to be out there as well, doing a couple of episodes, maybe some carpet interviews. So if you want to chat with us, we'll be there. But I definitely encourage all of you, again, because we're so focused on careers on this podcast, to get out there and do what you possibly can to move your career in the direction that you want it to go.
Hey, can you put a little sunshine out there just a little bit?
Yeah.
Get into residency, because on the other side, the docs outside the box have said 100 times, I'm making 101. That, when you get through residency, that's when people start begging for you. All right? Those locums are eating you up.
Ciao.
Pediatrics, whatever subspecialty you want, you're probably going to get it, because the numbers are in your favor. You want to do child immunology? Go ahead. You want to come down to Nashville? There are whole peds fellowships waiting for you. Child nephrology wants you. So just when you get to the other side, you are the highlight. So just make it through, people. We're here to help you through that.
Yeah. That is a great thing to end on, is that you are definitely going to be wanted. Ain't no more begging. The begging is over.
Yes.
Because the odds are ever in your favor.
Oh, yeah. So get your Keith Sweat on right now. On the other side, it'll be all good.
Yeah.
It'll be all good. Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Uche, Dr. Love. Dr. Love, love having you here. I wasn't here with you the last time, so this was really fun for me. Dr. Uche, this is the first time we're actually meeting.
I know, talking to each other, yes.
Yeah. So, but I enjoyed having you both on. This was such a great topic to discuss. and especially your expertise as an assistant program director. We really, really appreciate that. And I hope people, take everything that we've talked about today and hopefully apply it however you can to your situation. So we will see you at the SNMA conference Easter weekend, people.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say peace.
Peace.
You already know who it is. It's your boy.